Oh, good afternoon. Welcome to another Off Lip Radio Show, where today I'm here with these two fine, handsome young fellows. And we're here today to talk about and find out what the heck is going on down at the San Lorenzo River at the river mouth right by the boardwalk. So if you've been curious and want to know, there's a lot going on. It's been happening for I think now 8 years. And it's finally coming to fruition. And we're going to find out what is going on. So introduce yourself, guys, and then we'll get on with the show.
Sure, I'm David Revell with Integral Consulting, coastal geomorphologist.
And this has been your baby, right?
Yeah, I've been working on this project since 2014.
And now, what have you been part of now?
This
is my friend Al Ramadan.
Hi, I'm Al Ramadan, and I'm with Save the Waves Coalition, one of the nonprofits here in Santa Cruz.
So, Dave, why don't you just tell us what's going on, and kind of like from the beginning, get the history of what's happening down here. There's a lot going on. I didn't know about it until I read Al's post on Facebook. What? And then I drove by it today on my bike, and I went, what? It's a huge undertaking and a huge project.
It is.
So would you explain a little bit about it, and then
Sure.
all the pros and cons?
Yeah, I guess we can start at the beginning when we built the Santa Cruz Harbor.
Yeah.
In the mid 60s. That changed the way sand moves on our beaches, and basically has widened Seabright Beach and Main Beach by hundreds of feet. And that widened beach has changed the way the San Lorenzo River naturally opened and closed. And that began sort of affecting salmon and steelhead fisheries back in the 60s and 70s. The boardwalk and others had been opening the lagoon, and that's really dangerous for some of the steelhead and salmon species that require that closed lagoon system as a nursery ground. And when it closes, it fills like a bathtub, and as it fills, it floods the boardwalk, which is a federal historic landmark. It floods the neighborhoods in Lower Ocean, basements on Pacific Ave. It also creates a lot of marine safety difficulties. We've had in the last couple of years, well, I guess 3 years ago, we lost somebody when two little girls were just playing in the sand, dug out a very shallow trench across the beach, and then it blew open. Their dad died saving them. And so there's a lot of life safety issues. At times, lifeguards, when it opens in the summer and lifeguards are on one side of the river, hundreds of people are on the other side of the river, and this turns into a raging, rapid-filled river for a few hours.
Right.
So we've got that, and then we also get a lot of water quality issues that can affect human health, animal health, and obviously the species that live in it.
So what list of things that needed to change 8 years ago? What did you before when you first put pen to paper? What things had to change immediately?
So first of all, the city took over management of the lagoon mouth, and you've probably over the last 8 years seen a lot of tractors on the beach, a lot of sand castles being built, so to speak, opening and closing of the river, being done with the idea of protecting salmon and steelhead and other endangered species, the tidewater goby that lives in the lagoon, as much as possible, and balancing these other flood control and marine safety issues. So the project came about when working with a lot of different agencies, the Army Corps of Engineers, National Marine Fisheries Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, our Coastal Commission, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the Central Coast Water Boards. I was on conference calls with the city and them for 8 years.
So everyone had to agree.
Everybody had to agree.
Right. And everyone did agree.
Yes.
Was there any fight back? Any fight about?
There was a lot of
pushback?
Challenging conversations and thoughts that went into it. And what we have here is the first of its kind.
Okay.
The way this system is designed to work is basically we have two pipes over here.
Okay. I'm going to show them on the camera.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the smaller pipe is an 8-inch pipe, and that's going to preferentially pull salt water off the bottom of the lagoon and help freshen that lagoon, creating that nursery habitat for steelhead and salmon.
Okay.
Once it gets to an elevation of 5 feet, based on the train trestle staff plate or staff gauge, the white thing off in the distance, then it'll activate this overflow weir, which is very similar to what the the flume in Soquel Creek in Capitola is, where the lagoon just stays the same water level all summer. So we're going to be trying, the new innovative thing about this is trying to take that salt water off the bottom of the lagoon first.
Right.
And then we'll have this overflow weir, so we won't have to be doing these emergency breaches every time water gets too high. It should help with water quality issues as well. So there's a lot of benefits to this project. The other nice thing about this is part of the permitting and maintenance of this project. The river will still blow out in the wintertime. So I've heard a lot of misinformation that people are scared that we're going to screw up the salmon runs. This is why we're doing this project. So what we'll be doing,
talk about the salmon and how they're going to return here to the river.
Yeah, let's just talk about the annual cycle first of all.
Sure.
Sort of the first thing that happens is like, sorry, but so first thing that happens is sort of like October, November, the first big rainfall, right, Dave? It blows all the sand that's sitting behind us right here out to sea.
Yes.
Opens up the river mouth.
It ends up back on this beach over here.
Yes, it all moves down to the harbor.
Which is, over the last 100 years has gained
250
feet wider.
Yeah.
And actually, for a while, it creates a fantastic surf break. Like, let's not forget that. So when this thing blows out, all the sand goes out, there's a surf break out there, and then the salmon can run.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And that happens in sort of October, November each year.
Yeah, usually the first major rain is when that opens, and then the system typically, the river stays open for most of the season until April, May, June, when water levels flow in the river start to drop.
And then the sand washes back in, closes it all up, right?
Yeah.
That's the natural cycle.
Right.
We're not changing any of that, right?
No, the only thing we're doing is not letting the water levels get as high.
Right.
So, and because we've already altered the breaching and closing dynamics, in the fall, this would be the prime time to do it because of the storm coming this coming week. The city would move sand away from San Lorenzo Point and reset the river mouth so it would stay up against the point. This is also a historic location of where surfing first came to the mainland. This was the first surf spot surfed in the U.S. mainland. And so it's got a lot of cultural...
Three Princes back in the 1920s.
1880s.
The surf break has been gone for a long time. I think it came back last year for 10 minutes. I mean, 10 minutes.
Occasionally.
Will it return here permanent, do you think?
It probably won't be a permanent thing, partly because of the change, how much wider the beaches are at Seabright and Main Beach.
Right.
What happens, I mean, we had a really good sandbar in 2017. In order to make the river mouth work, even before the harbor, we needed big rain events, which moved the sand and cobbles from the watershed out into the ocean. That's what creates the really good sandbars. 2017, we had some of the highest water rainfall accumulation since we've been keeping records, and we had a really good sandbar that lasted for several months.
But Dave, so where we're standing here, and all of this sand here and all that sort of stuff, before the harbor happened in 1964, there were waves breaking here, and the waves are lapping up over here somewhere, right?
Correct.
So this sand didn't exist here. There was a period where it did, like in April, May, June, July, that sort of time frame. And so this point that we're over here, this used to be where the surf was breaking.
Yes.
And Bob Pearson was telling me the other day he used to surf through the actual cave and come out on the side, from that side and that side over here. The point being, 64, the harbor shows up. We get 250 feet of sand that goes in Seabright Beach. And exactly, and this widens up by about 150 feet. So now all of the ocean gets pushed that away from all of the cliffs, away from all the things. So all of these cliffs and everything else that were that were endangered before, i.e. they were going to fall in, and so was everything behind them, including roads and houses. No problem now. Everything's good. So from that point of view, it's good.
Yeah.
And by the way, we've got a harbor with phenomenal resources for boats and fishermen and all that sort of stuff. So this is the two sides of the argument, right?
Yeah, we engineered ourselves into the problem, so we're engineering our way out of the problem.
Too wrong to make it right?
It makes it better.
Maybe.
In this case.
So you mentioned earlier that there was the pink salmon.
Yeah.
Hasn't been seen here for...
So in 2019, we got the first pink salmon. The city and a bunch of contractors seine the lagoon multiple times a year just to look at how salmon and steelhead populations are recovering or doing. And in 2019, they got the first pink salmon seen in the lagoon since 1904.
Wow.
So, and in that time, in the 8.5 years I've been working on the river mouth, the city's been working on a lot of other things in the watershed. So they've been cleaning up the old failing redwood septic tanks for ages. Water quality now is probably better than it used to be. Even with
Cowles is clean beach now. It never
Cowles
used to
is
be,
cleaned
right?
up.
That's a big thing that we achieved.
Yes.
The drought affected this at all? Is the drought? Or is this going to improve the city water or the availability of city water? Can you talk about the aquifer and talk about SoCal?
So this project, you know, one of the other things the city has done is they've been working with the on the Endangered Species Act. They had to come up with a habitat conservation plan, which one of the requirements of that was for them to, during summer dry conditions, to release about 8 CFS, cubic feet per second, of water from Loch Lomond. And that keeps the watershed moving and flowing and gives fish now connections higher into the watershed. So if lagoon water quality conditions get really bad, too hot, too much algae or something, they can swim upstream and get out of the poor water quality. So that's come online in the last few years. And that combined with the change in the river mouth management of letting the nursery kind of be here instead of just blowing it open every time it closes, and some changes in how they're trying to manage trees that fall into the creek. You know, typically people would just go out because they're worried about flooding, and they'll just buck it up, chop it into little pieces, and let it get washed down the river. Now they're letting some of those bigger pieces of wood stay, and when the creeks interact with them, they create scour holes and sort the sediment and create much better spawning gravels for the salmon and steelhead.
So steelhead's going to come back here.
Steelhead are in here right now.
They are?
So the day after the September rain event, which was the highest rain we've ever seen in September, the fish seine crew was out here, and they got about 75 fingerling steelhead, about this size, that are kind of in that, trying to get enough mass on their bodies so they can go back into the ocean. So that was one day of seining. I was down here monitoring construction, and I saw a bald eagle grab one of those fingerlings and take off. So there's definitely fish in the system right now.
Yeah. So explain real quick once again how the system works. I mean, it's pretty simple. It's very simple, right? It's gravity. It's gravity. Activated.
There's no pumps.
No pumps. So give us a quick 365 view of what's going to happen here in 1 year.
Sure.
During the year, and during the winter months and the summer months and fall months, and give us 1 year of how this is all going to work.
So starting tomorrow, the river will likely be open to the ocean.
So this is not going to look like this tomorrow. Where we're standing, we're going to be swimming.
Yeah.
Okay.
With the rain. So the guys over here right now are taking out these generators.
Yeah.
And they're going to be taking out the pumps today.
Okay.
So all that's going to go away. The river
we have
will be
pumps here right now that are working.
Just to keep the water level low so they can actually do the work on the pipes and all that shit. It's just for them. This is a temporary situation, right, Dave?
Yeah, no, they're just keeping it. So the river will open, and it'll be salmon season. Salmon can start swimming upstream and downstream. Steelhead. Then, as the season goes on, hopefully we get a lot of rain. We get some good surf because the sand's coming out. Then in the spring, it's going to close up. And when it closes, it'll start filling like a bathtub. This system will.
This is all automatic. It's not man-made. It's not
correct.
There's no switch.
It's natural.
Owls that come down and turn the switch on.
There is some maintenance that'll be required, and we're going to have to figure out what that looks like.
Yeah.
But basically, at the far inland side is where this infiltration gallery will go, and that basically is looks like a big, drum that sits on the bottom. It's got screens and holes so that it can pull the salt water through the sand and start to freshen the lagoon faster. At the time, and as the lagoon rises, we'll be pulling the salt water out first, and then as it rises and reaches that 5-foot elevation, then it'll spill over into the overflow weir and keep the lagoon water's level set at 5 feet.
That comes like a filter.
Yes.
It's a filter. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Simple terms.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then that'll, start draining and stabilizing the lagoon
So
water
for the
levels.
whole of summer,
Yeah.
it's going to be at 5 feet
5
or
feet.
less. It's not going to be in that situation
And
where
it's
it's
going
at
to be
10
free of algae. It's going to be nice fresh water.
It will be fresher water. We'll still get freshwater algae in there.
Yeah.
But what will happen is the beach will be able to build up, so we won't have the same likelihood of one of those artificial breaches that can kill people.
Yeah. Okay.
And is also really bad for the fish when you get one of those out of season, because what happens is all the fresh water goes out, and what's left is like really hot, low oxygen salt water perched on the bottom.
Yeah.
So we'll be able to have a much healthier lagoon system
Right.
throughout the entire summer. And then flash forward to almost a year from now,
Yeah.
when we are looking at, the rain forecast, we'll come out and excavate the sand away from the point, pile it over here. The river will rise naturally, blow out. We'll be resetting and steering the river to run out around San Lorenzo Point, and take that extra sand out there and start our surf spot again.
For the surface listening and watching, what is going to happen from here where we're standing? Actually, I'll go back up to Westcliff, front of Al's house. What's going to happen from Al's house to Capitola? If any of the surf spots are going to change, are they get back in? Are they going to improve?
Not as a result of this.
Okay,
work.
nothing's changing.
Nothing on that. Nothing on the
Nothing
west
there.
side. Nothing on the. That's all. Nothing. Like, so I don't know exactly, but this berm that we're sitting on now, we calculated the other day, is about 7,000 cubic yards, okay, of sand, and that's how much it is. So that's all going to blow out. It's going to create a sand point where it always was, off the point here, and there'll be surf break.
It might break.
For a little bit.
They have a comeback.
Now, every year, however, we pump 280,000 cubic yards out of the harbor,
Yeah.
which is like, that's 50 times the amount of sand that's here,
Yeah.
and we blow it onto Twin Lakes.
Right.
And that all trickles down and blows down to
Yeah,
Capitola
yeah.
and all that
Right,
sort of
right,
stuff, right?
right.
Blacks and then around the corner and all that sort of
Right.
stuff. So, in terms of this, it's not going to change anything. It's not going to change shit on the west side,
Right.
and it's not going to change anything over there because it's 2 or 3% of the sand relative to what's coming out of the
Coming out
harbour.
of the harbour,
Okay.
yeah.
Now, having said that, there's a lot of interest in using sand. Okay, just like the Seabright Beach has now protected all of these cliffs. Those cliffs aren't going to get damaged anymore because there's sand. There's a lot of interest and discussion about whether we should do the same thing on the west side.
Yeah.
Okay, and take some percentage of the payload, i.e. the sand that's getting pumped out of the harbour,
Yeah.
and take it up here and dump it on that side. That's a discussion. There's no plans for that.
Yeah.
There's going this took 8 years.
Yeah.
It's probably going to take a generation for that to happen.
Right.
So the only other thing, so nothing is going to change other than the functioning of the lagoon
Right.
from this project.
safer.
It will be safer,
Healthier.
healthier, less flooding.
Yeah.
Water levels will be down. The boardwalk's not going to be flooded. The streets aren't going to be flooded.
Yeah, and we'll be able to steer the river back to sort of do our best to keep the surf at,
And the salmon,
yeah, and the salmon and
run's gonna be
steelhead
good.
will be maintained.
Right.
And
You're gonna
have
have
better
Remember,
nursery
this is
habitat.
a major project that was quietly happened.
The city council has had to approve this probably a half a dozen times over the years
Yeah.
to apply for grants.
Yeah.
So most of the funding for construction and design was funded by the Wildlife Conservation Board,
Okay.
and about 25% from the city.
Take to the city.
Yeah, it's
So-
about $3 million round
Yeah.
figures for this whole project.
Yeah.
Which is not a lot of money for
The harbour costs a lot more than $3 million.
You're
let me
dealing
tell you.
with water and sand and tides and weather and God knows what else.
Waves.
Waves, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, this is the first of its kind. If it works here, this type of system may be installed in lagoons up and down the coast to help avoid some of these same problems.
How many lagoons would you say, Dave, between San Francisco and here, just as a starting point? How many river mouths with lagoons would there be there? Dozens?
There's probably a dozen or so, maybe a little less than a dozen. The only place you'd really want to do this kind of system, a place like Pescadero or San Gregorio or Pilarcitos Creek, you're not going to want to do this kind of system there. There's not that urban encroachment in the
urban
lagoon
development
and the
there,
floor floodplain.
That's just Mother Nature doing Mother Nature's
Right.
thing.
Let it.
And who designed the system? Is it something
So this one was designed by Environmental Science Associates. There's been Masidi Miller, there has been Herrick Kasunich, they've been geotech and structural engineers. I'm with Integral Consulting, been helping the city manage the river mouth for a number of years. And it's really been the city's project. And You know, they've invested time and time again in trying to improve habitat quality, recreational opportunities, and sensitive species.
It's a good story.
Yeah.
It's a good
Yeah.
story. I mean, something happened, man.
Something happened, something positive, and it wasn't $25 million, it's only $3 million, which seems like
Something happened,
Seems like
and
a
it's
deal.
gonna be
Seems like a
good.
hell of a deal. But what do you? I asked you before, but for the listening audience, what do you? We stand back. We can't. We're not standing here in 10 years' time. But when we're up there, in 10 years' time, what are we going to be looking at? That
In the summertime, we're going to be looking at a nice, healthy, sandy beach and a lagoon that's much healthier.
yeah.
And with a surf spot that is in the where it should naturally be, up against the point.
Yeah. So all good, positive things.
All positive.
Nothing. Like, I can't think of why somebody would have a negative idea for this not to happen.
I think the perception, anytime people see
The tractor.
construction equipment on the beach and part of the beach has been blocked off for a bunch of the summer,
Yeah.
you know, down by the lagoon where a lot of kids like to swim because it's calm and warm. So there's been some temporary recreational restrictions to this
Yeah.
area,
Yeah.
but those will be gone
Yeah.
starting next week.
Wow.
So we're
But
finally
but took
through.
8 years.
Yeah.
Let's be sort of get
Yeah.
the perspective here. It took 8 years to even get to this point, right?
Right.
So like, that's part
I
of
feel
the
like I should have been here 8 years ago, like 4 years ago, like
yeah, and seeing how it
not just riding my bike this morning, going, "What the hell is that?"
right,
You know?
right. But 8 agencies,
Yeah.
including California Coastal
Well, I
Commission,
can
who are
imagine,
challenging
but
on
you
this stuff.
imagine, that
So
must have
I'm-
been a headache when you sat down and 8 years ago, go, "Holy shit! I got to talk to 8 agencies here." And
Monthly calls for 8 years.
And I know 50% of them is going to be a pushback, right? So you must have had how much? I mean,
The agencies, once we all kind of collectively said this is the solution we're pursuing, the agencies actually have been very supportive.
Yeah.
And we held roundtables monthly.
Yeah.
So when one agency would have concerns, say about water quality, the other agencies would be like, hey, but this is going to really help endangered species. And so they all kind of everybody at the table had to compromise a little bit
Right.
to get something. And,
Wow.
you know, what we've been saying down here all summer for those who have been, you know, adversely affected at times or heard the construction and everything else is, you know, we're breaking eggs to make an omelet. So the omelet's almost cooked. And the salmon will start.
It's going to have to be an grand opening party.
It's going to happen pretty soon, mate. I mean,
Grand opening will happen
Tuesday, Wednesday,
Tuesday.
Tuesday, Wednesday. If you're standing up here, there's going to be water running.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I'm going to come down and watch that.
that's pretty exciting.
Yeah,
It'll
very
be good.
exciting. Anyway, thanks for your time again.
Yeah, thanks,
And
Neil.
is any website information that people can go to, or
Yeah, if you
I
go
think
to
if I
the
scan something up there, you told me to
Yeah.
scan.
So if you go to the City of Santa Cruz website and type in San Lorenzo River,
Yeah.
you'll get the web page. There's also signs posted up at the overlook here. There's a small QR code. You take a picture of that. There's a 4-minute video that explains the project and some of what I babbled on about for
Yeah.
a lot longer.
And Neil, I'd just like to say one extra
yeah,
thing,
please.
which is like, Dave is too modest to say this, so I'm going to say it for him,
Yeah.
which is that most people are like, no, you don't touch anything, don't mess around with nature, don't do any of that sort of stuff, right? Just like go away, let it all crumble.
Right.
Dave's one of the few practical, in my opinion, Dave's one of the few practical geomorphologists who actually think, that's not actually right. We can actually do things that actually improve for multiple sort of like constituents
Right.
and protect the infrastructure and all that sort of stuff. And so
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and just my sort of final pitch on this is that, look, I was at a conference just the other week about climate change. We got 7 years, right, to really change the way things are happening. If we don't make these kind of practical decisions
Right.
about stuff on the west side, about the stuff on the east side, about all of the issues that the whole thing's going in the ocean anyhow.
Right.
And that may be the objective of some people, but there's a lot of people who don't want that to happen, right? And so
It's happening right underneath our nose.
the whole of the top of the top of Westcliff just fell down. If you haven't been up there, go and take a look at the cave that came down.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a whole bunch of stuff on the east side. So my point is that it's time now for all of the surfers, all of the fishers, all of the boaters, all the they've got to get engaged in this conversation, because it's not going to happen if you leave it up to the agencies. They're not going to do anything.
You said earlier you engineered to
Reverse
reverse
engineering
engineer
mistake.
But that you can't engineer. What you're trying to do, that Mother Nature, you can't re-engineer.
You can't stop what's happening right now. The storms are getting bigger, the swells are getting bigger, the cliffs are all going in the ocean. That's not a debate. The question is, can we do anything about it? What you've seen on the other side of this cliff here is there's now a 250-foot beach that didn't exist.
Right.
And all those...
And shouldn't be existing.
Well, you could argue that it shouldn't be. On the other side, all of the infrastructure that's behind it is actually a positive.
Yeah.
And so with it, this is the whole debate, right? I'm not suggesting either one's the right way. I'm just saying get engaged in this conversation because it's really freaking important.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dave.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say,
Please.
sea level rise is going to win. Only a fool's going to pick a fight with the ocean, and we shouldn't be foolish about this.
Yeah.
But it's not an evacuation. We can watch it coming slowly. We need to get out of the way gracefully. And how we do that doesn't mean we have to run and sell and all that. We just need to adaptively grow with the changing environment.
Yeah, and in Australia, I mean, this is a little bit of my perspective, is when I was a Grom, we went surfing Noosa in 1975. You know what they were doing? They were pumping sand onto the beach at Noosa to protect the whole of the beach, right? Now, I'm not saying that's the answer. I'm just saying that is already happening in the world today, and it's had a profoundly positive impact for a lot of constituents, including surfers, right? And so if you think sand, as an example, could defend some of these areas, they can also create surf breaks. And that's a resource, Neil, and it's a resource that doesn't often get spoken about. Yeah. But it drives this town. Yeah. Right? Surfing drives Santa Cruz.
Well, if there's no way you can wrap up the town and we'll go home.
See you later.
Yeah, that's right. A question for you. My friend of mine has a house on Opal Cliffs that it's remodeling it. But the problem she has having is with the seawall. It's a battle. It's spending thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's a battle. Where here I look at the beach over here, and they got no problem right here.
They used to have a problem.
They used to have a big problem.
Right. So how is her problem going to change? She's on the other side. She's at Privates, just a little bit south of Privates. Is her problem going to change?
I would say that's a whole nother talk we should have.
Okay.
Yes.
And I'd be happy to talk about that. I've been working on sea level rise and climate change work for better part of a quarter of a century. Okay. So let's absolutely have that discussion.
We'll have that chat another time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe Al will invite us back.
That'd be awesome.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Neil.
Thank you very much.
See ya.